'70s are my favorite decade of film. There was so much experimentation going on because the Hollywood studio system had collapsed, and there and movie budgets were brought much lower than they were at in the 1960s. So you could tell different types of stories and you could tell them in different types of ways. And the camera became an integral tool in telling the story. Not that the camera wasn't before, but more than ever, film became about the camera and the actor and the idea behind the movie. And even though some of the ideas about privacy may seem dated in this film now, simply because we've now become used to everything we think, say, do, and even feel in our hearts being analyzed by not just the government, but by society at large to make sure that we are not going to disrupt society, and we are, so many of its privacy concerns are outdated in that sense, but it still manages to. So even after its message has become dated, because we now live in a surveillance, we now live in a total surveillance state where there is no such thing as a private thought. There is no such thing as, private feelings. You just have, it is part of your duty as the citizen to conform to what our leaders say is best, and what our leaders and experts say are best. And so as a message movie, this doesn't really work. But it shows that good filmmaking, even after your message becomes dated, can still win the day and make a piece of art that stands up 50 years later. And boy, does this stand up. And I know some people probably will disagree with this, but I will say this. This is, to me, Francis Ford Coppola's magnum opus. Yes, better than the Godfather movies, better than Apocalypse Now. This is the movie that, if I were Francis Ford Coppola, I'd want to be remembered for. This movie does so much with so little. I mean, basically the entire movie revolves around one conversation on tape, and yet I was on the edge of my seat for every second of it. This has some of the best performances you will ever see on film. Gene Hackman is, in my opinion, one of the greatest actors in the history of American cinema, and this is his best performance. It also makes you question seeing a movie this old and how well he plays a broken down middle-aged man. It makes you wonder if he was just born 40 years old. But hey, it's one of the, but it's one of those performances where you can tell why the person behind this performance is a legend in the industry. And really, if you want to know how to be a good film actor, watch Gene Hackman. Everything he does in this movie serves the character. Every little look, every piece of body language, it's all perfectly put together to bring you on a journey with this character. And that's what holds this movie up, even now that its message really has no relevance in our modern world. This movie holds up because it's about his character's journey. And pretty much every scene is told from his character's point of view. and it is compelling from the first to the last second. Gene Hackman plays a man named Henry Cowell who's a surveillance expert. He just, in his words, all he cares about is getting a nice fat recording. He doesn't care what's on the recording. If he's been hired by somebody to get a recording of somebody, he just wants to get a good, clear recording of what they said and pass it on. He doesn't care what they said. He doesn't care who the people are. He has no personal feelings in this. And we see the toll that this has taken on his personal life. He has no telephone in his home because he knows how easily those can be bugged. He has a relationship with a girlfriend, but it breaks apart due to his paranoia about security. And basically, the only thing he has in his life that keeps him tethered as a human being and keeps him relatably human is his saxophone playing. That's it. That's the only thing he really has to hold him together. And that becomes a problem as once things start kicking off, he starts to become obsessed with one conversation he recorded, mainly because he can't figure out why the CIA is willing to pay him $3,000 for a conversation of two people in the park basically talking about nothing. I mean, they're talking about how they haven't finished their Christmas shopping and the sadness of seeing an old homeless man sleeping on a bench covered in newspaper. That's it at first. But as he edits and gets down to the nitty-gritty of the recording, more and more compelling elements start showing themselves. Like, for instance, at one point, the man in this conversations, who he doesn't even know, says, he'd kill us if he had the chance. Now, that compels him, and that starts his obsession with this. All of a sudden, he starts worrying about what's going to be done with this recording. And he can't decide whether to hand it over to the CIA or not. And of course, this leads to him being followed and intimidated by a CIA agent played by Harrison Ford. Believe it or not. Yeah. Long before, 3 years before Star Wars. So if you want to see a young Harrison Ford, this is a movie to see him in. And it is intense. And his performance is intense. And you can see why Gene Hackman's character is intimidated by him. So it's a very intense performance, and things start playing out, and he becomes convinced that the CIA is going to murder this couple, but he doesn't know at all what to do about it. And he starts going more and more insane, and he becomes paranoid about his own security until it all comes together in a climax that will leave you stunned, and then you think it's the climax of the movie, only the events of the movie have really caused him to lose it, and he for the first time, Gene Hackman knows what it's like to be one of the people he's been dispassionately surveilling, and he becomes so paranoid about it that the movie ends with the only thing he has left to him being his saxophone, which he's playing inside a ruined apartment as he's destroyed everything else he owns. Even his precious figure of the Virgin Mary, that he takes very seriously, because he's so paranoid about everything being a possible listening device. And of course, nowadays, we're surveilled all the time. So that part seems dated. You know, that's a relic of a half century ago when people expected privacy and thought that people listening to them and had an expectation of privacy, which of course we don't have anymore. Nobody thinks that anything they do is private anymore. So you know that seems dated, but the journey, and it's so compelling. The character journey he's on is just so compelling, and just the way it plays out, and watching it play out, and watching how masterful Coppola is with the camera and the sound editing. This movie may have the most important sound editing of any movie in the history of Hollywood. And the way Coppola uses the sound and picture to tell this story is so masterful. It puts pretty much every other director out there to shame. This is without a doubt one of the greatest films ever made, and I honestly think it's worth seeing for everyone, even if you just want to understand how to tell a story that doesn't actually cover that much, but make it feel big. I mean, this movie is basically about listening to one conversation over and over again, and yet it feels so much bigger for that, and it never feels boring. The camera is constantly moving. It's constantly giving us different perspectives. Every camera movement is used to enhance mood. Every little sound is used to put you on the edge of your seat. This is a perfect example of a Hitchcockian style thriller, not done by Hitchcock. And I'm going to say it again. This is Francis Ford Coppola's best film. And if you like me love film as just an art form and love the experience of watching film, watch this, but don't watch it in a room where you're going to be distracted. Don't watch it in a room where people are going to be walking in front of the TV or anything like that. Just sit down somewhere, turn out the lights, so that you're totally focused on this one film, and watch it from beginning to end in one sitting, and you won't regret it. You'll find it absolutely your appreciation for film as an art form will be increased by seeing this. This is a 10 out of 10 stone cold masterpiece that overcomes the fact that it's a half century old, and some of its social concerns and its technology are ancient, and just gives you one of the best film experiences that has ever existed. This is a masterpiece. Go and watch it. Thank you for listening, and I hope you have a good day.